To this story now, the SACP is calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to deliver a sincere State of the Nation address. The party says there's no greater crisis than rolling power cuts, and Ramaphosa should treat this as such. While there's been consensus on some issues with alliance partners, the ANC, some remain unresolved. We know the ANC is proposing an energy state of disaster. There's no clarity on what it would look like yet. There's also a cabinet reshuffle coming up. In his 7th SONA, Ramaphosa is expected to set the tone for government's program for the year. Let's discuss this now with SACP spokesperson, Mr. Alex Mashilo. Mr. Mashilo, good morning and thank you very much for your time. So it's 2 days before the State of the Nation address, and it comes amid a worsening energy crisis, high levels of unemployment and crime, and just general anxiety among citizens around their ability to eke out a living. What should the president honestly tell the people of South Africa?
We are facing a crisis. In the third quarter of 2022, we had a population of approximately 12 million people within the borders of South Africa who were unemployed, either actively looking for work or discouraged. We see the energy crisis represented by long and frequent hours of load shedding continue. The levels of crime in our communities have risen. In certain areas, it is as if the criminals are in charge, and we are a capitalist, stateless society where the criminals do as they please. There are just so many problems. What we expect from the president is an outline of a plan to solve these problems with priority on immediately ending load shedding, tackling the high levels of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. If the president will come out in the State of the Nation address with a convincing plan that South Africans will accept, we will begin to see a change of attitude towards the government and the mobilization of the people to take part in solving the problems we face as a country.
When you say that the people should take part, I remember last year at the SONA, it was about consensus building, leaving no one behind. That tone there, are we not likely to see the same tone? Because most people were quite concerned that there have been so many promises. We do expect the president, at the very least, to acknowledge there is a crisis and that they're working on it. And so far as electricity is concerned, they're working on the crime levels, they'll bolster security cluster and all of those things. But really, it just becomes more promises. Does it need to be a comprehensive plan? What exactly needs to change in the manner he speaks to South Africans this Thursday?
We need the gist of the plan rather than the nitty-gritties. If we can have a strategic high level of the plan with key points on how we can turn around South Africa, that can begin to take us forward. If you go back to the last year's State of the Nation address, you will recall that while there was the idea of no one being left behind and so on, the president asserted, unfortunately, in that State of the Nation address, that it was not the function of the government to create employment, but the function of the private sector. In an economy where you place the private sector to the front, there is no way you cannot not leave other people behind, because the private sector does not exist to look after the needs of the people. Every company in the private sector has been established to make profit, and in the process of making profit, it has to explore ways of producing more output with fewer workers and at a very low cost. Especially the pursuit of producing more output with fewer workers, we have seen producing retrenchments in the mining sector, retrenchments in the economy. And by so doing, it were leaving many people behind. As we speak, and just to repeat the point, approximately 12 million South Africans have been left behind insofar as employment is concerned. The state has to play its leading role. It has to demonstrate through the government why we go on the ballot to elect the government. We do not elect the government in order for the government to delegate its responsibilities to the private sector. This does not mean that the private sector cannot play a role in the economy. What it means is that the state must not delegate its responsibilities to the private sector. By the way, the load shedding that we face today is a result of declining state productive capacity in ESCOM. We inherited as this state an ESCOM that had high productive capacity. Over the years, that productive capacity to produce energy declined and deteriorated. As a result of the decline in state capacity to produce electricity, here we are in a crisis. And the shift to us would have come at a great cost. It is a shift that started in 1998 after the government adopted the white paper on energy policy, indicating that throughout the world, governments were no longer building energy generation self-sufficiency through public utilities, and they were therefore opening up electricity generation as a sector to achieve energy self-sustainability through private sector competition. We have seen what that shift has done. It has plunged us into this current crisis of load shedding. In addition to that shift, we have seen projects like Medupi and Kusile failing because of poor design, failing because of failing to meet completion deadlines, failing because of cost overruns, and adding to the crisis that we are facing. We have seen sabotage at ESCOM. We have seen outsourcing at ESCOM serving as an entry point of sabotage. So the state has to play its role, and what we want to hear from the State of the Nation address, which we believe that it is what the South Africans want to hear, is the leadership of the state through the government in solving the problems that we face.
Now, you as an alliance partner, along with the ANC, recommended the state of disaster. You've heard expert analysis, I'm sure. They're divided on whether this would be the silver bullet resulting in the ending of load shedding in 12 months. Now, given all that has been said of late, do you still believe it's the best legislative instrument to deal with the crisis?
If you have a clear program politically, there has to be consultation in the alliance so that by the time when the government does so, it does so with the ANC marching together with alliance partners, having determined both the content and the direction of the state of disaster. Because we are in a democratic multi-party situation where the government, in terms of our constitution, is constituted from democratic election in which political parties are recognized. So what is important is for the ANC at the political party level to consult with its alliance partners. There are certain things that we believe indeed, if given the right content and direction after consultation, politically as well as through the government, we can see the national state of disaster on energy beginning to turn around the situation.
Then on the reshuffle, some are accusing the president of dithering, saying he should have actually reshuffled his cabinet before the cabinet lekgotla. Your views on just that?
We come from the years of many reshuffles.
Yes.
I'm sure you remember the midnight reshuffles.
Those were happening at midnight. We could certainly have daylight ones.
Yeah, and there were daylight ones. And the people were complaining about the reshuffles. They were creating instability. There was a time when you could not know who is the minister in this particular portfolio because of the rapid pace of reshuffles. When you go to make changes to the cabinet, you must make well-considered changes, especially politically. Within the ANC, you have to consult with your alliance partners. And earlier this year, the SACP General Secretary, Solly Mabaila, came out on behalf of the party criticizing the reshuffles that occurred in various provinces after the ANC provincial conferences. It is a fact that those provincial conferences were contested, like the national conference. So you cannot make use of contestations at the conference to begin to make reshuffles. Reshuffles require an objective evaluation of the performance of the government. But in this case, you have two vacancies at in the national cabinet. You have a vacancy of public administration, public service and administration, and we all know that the Minister of Transport has been elected the ANC Secretary General. Other than that, including that, by the way, there has to be consultation before reshuffles. We don't want destabilization. If there is a change in the cabinet or replacement of positions, they must be highly welcomed rather than condemned. And if you do not consult, you will be condemned.
But one would assume that perhaps consultation happened between December and January, perhaps. But you say that the frequency of those reshuffles from the President Zuma era were creating some sort of instability. But some are then arguing that the decision not to act right now is creating uncertainty here, where there are low-hanging fruits. For instance, you've got the deputy president of the political party possibly being the deputy president of the country. That one, some would say, is a low-hanging fruit because the former president, David Mabuza of the ANC, has made it quite easy by indicating that he wants to step down. So would that not create certainty?
You might have the so-called low-hanging fruit, but those low-hanging fruit can create a situation where in future, competition for positions of leadership in the ANC intensifies, and the ANC will become more factionally divided, because when people see a conference, they will see an opportunity to be elected, after which they will be heading to the cabinet. We don't like reshuffles done in that particular way. We need a cabinet that is assembled in an objective manner, and if there is a reshuffle, that reshuffle has to be informed by an objective evaluation of the performance of the government and has to take place after thorough consultation.